Hi, this is Rachel from the Dotting Center. Today we're making coasters. Think of them as little pedestals upon which our beloved beverages can sit proudly. Plus, they keep our tabletops looking fresh. You know how sometimes your whole day can be made by that first quiet cup of coffee in the morning? Or like that glass of sparkling spirulina kombucha in the afternoon? Now, don't you all break the internet trying to get your hands on my green drink recipe. I'll happily share it in the show notes below. Anyway, let's protect our tables in style, okay? So today I'm going to show you the set I made using the same paint colors and stencil, but I dotted a different design for each coaster. In this video, we'll do this coaster from start to finish. We'll cover stencil transfer with chalk markers. We'll use PBO prism paint for a unique jewel-like dot right in the center. We'll dot with all different kinds of tools. And finally, we'll add resin for a solid finish. Whoa, so cool. I am so glad you're here with me. So go grab your favorite beverage and let's make a coaster together. Now for this project, I used dotting rods, stylus silicone tools, and paint applicator bottles. All of these are available at the Dotting Center. For the flat paints, I used these 6 colors. And for the applicator bottles, I used these 3 colors in a thicker medium body paint, so you can get extra plumpy dots. Well, you'll see that I use these coasters in this video. I no longer recommend them. Instead, I would use wood, and I have an awesome link in the description below where you can get them very affordably priced on Amazon. Now, you'll need your coaster to be impermeable to water and resistant to heat. So, you'll need to use resin for the surface. Now, if you've never used resin before, please research resin on YouTube before you get started. It's not something to enter into lightly. Take my word for it. Now, each one of these designs were created using the Mandala 2 stencil in my reversible stencil collection. It's the 3.5-inch size. And the one I used was the purple one. And like I said, each one of these, even though they are dotted differently, they all started using this stencil. It's a very versatile and fun to use stencil, and I'll show you exactly how to do that now. So here's a little note about these coasters. While they are adorable, and I will still use them, they are made out of silicone. And for those of you who are pros in the resin world, you will know that the one material that resin does not stick to, you guessed it, silicone. So now that I know this, I'm certainly not going to recommend it to anyone else. I will use these because I now know that I need to embed them in resin. But for you all, please buy wood, ceramic, you know, something that can tolerate heat and moisture, and slap some cork on the bottom, maybe some felt, and you're good to go. But that's my little upfront note about these coasters. All right, let's get into it. Now, before I start, I'm going to tell you that this chalk marker is horrible. It's not recommended for many reasons. I bought a bunch of them because I thought, hey, yeah, this is cool, you know, how could this go wrong? It's a chalk marker. Well, let me tell you. It goes on invisible, and then as it dries, it starts to show up. It also is very sloppy. It doesn't have a clear line. And probably the worst feature is that it doesn't fully wash off of anything. It leaves a permanent residue. Ugh. So just don't buy this one. I have a good one now, and I'll list it in the description below. But basically what I'm doing here is every other line I'm drawing, right? And then I flip it over to the other side because it's reversible. And I do every other line, then completing the design, right? So now you have this 6-point flower in the center, and then 6 kind of minaret looking spikes that come off of that flower. And now I'm going to use this terrible chalk marker on my compass. I just fashioned my own little lo-fi compass. And I'm going to draw some concentric circles from the center. So using the pink swirl tool, we're going to place a large bronze dot with that DecoArt Americana paint right in the center. And this is a thicker paint, so it has that little button that forms right in the center. And we can just smooth that out by taking a stylus tool and swirling it around. Okay, so now we're bringing out the big guns. This is PBO Prism paint. It is fantastic. If you haven't played with this, I would recommend buying a bottle and just watching what happens. So I'm using these little pipettes, and I want to apply a thick dot because that's where all of the magic happens, when you have a really thick dot of this stuff. Basically what happens is over time, over about a half hour, it will move and shift, and all of those little particles inside this paint will turn into little cells. And I'll show you what it looks like when it's dry. So I let that dry and kind of sit overnight. And do you see how it formed those cells? That PBO paint does really interesting things, and it just looks like a little unique jewel right in the center of your work. Now you can't really dot with it. I've tried it, and it's just too much and it's hard to control. So one dot in the center is really nice, and that seems to add some interest. So now what I'm doing is I'm just taking my stylus tool, and we're going to dot right down each one of the center of those flower petals. And so for each line of dots that come out from that petal, you just want to offset your dot so it snugs right in between the previous 2 dots. Now I'm going to grab some bronze paint and just do 2 little swoosh lines on either side of those petals. Okay, so I missed recording those green drop shapes, but I used my applicator bottle and I just applied a big dot and then drew it out. Now we're going to switch to our stylus tool and just make these little antler shapes right on top of, I don't know what else to call them. Oh, and by the way, I am using a sweet little Lazy Susan made by Jessie D Designs on Etsy. She makes these really cool mini cupcake size spinning Lazy Susans for doing work like this, and they're really fun. So I'll leave a link down below so that you can check that out. So now we're going to use our applicator bottle. This one is filled with that bronze paint, and I'm going to apply long drop shapes. So for the tip, I used a medium gauge tip because I want to make really, really puffy dots. And the more paint that you apply at the dot part of the drop shape, the longer you can extend the tail out. So here you can see up close what that's like, and this is the same technique that I used for those green dots with the missing footage. So now using a small rod, you just want to add a dot right on the outside edge of that circle, just touching the green drop shape. And here we're going to use the DecoArt Teal and the Lumiere Halo Green and just stagger dots on either side, just filling in that space with dots. And now using that Teal Topaz, we're just going to walk the dots on either side of those white antler shapes all the way to that first circle. And now using a larger stylus ball end, we're going to walk the dots with that Halo Blue Gold paint all the way down to that first circle as well. And now we're going to use a teeny tiny stylus and just make 5 little dots all along the bottom of those teal topaz dots. Now we're going to switch to Nutmeg Brown and just place 3 dots underneath those white dots with a slightly larger stylus tool. So now I switched to an applicator bottle, and in this bottle it has some really flowy black paint. And I'm just going to place 2 large black dots on either side of those brown dots. So now grab your smallest stylus tool and walk the dots down the full length of those bronze drop shapes all the way down to the point. Now we're going to take that bronze in the applicator bottle and just squirt out a big dot right in between those 2 black dots. Now let's make some elongated swoosh shapes right along the edges of those pointed shapes. Okay, so now I want to apply uniform size micro dots all along the edge of that circle. So I'm using my 1/8 inch pointed silicone tool and that Nutmeg Brown paint and just applying dots all the way around. Okay, so now I'm going to change out the tip of my applicator bottle. You can see here there's two different sizes. So I had a much larger gauge. Now I'm going to use my finest tip for that applicator bottle. I want to add micro dots with the bottle underneath those brown dots. And you can see it goes on so nice and smooth. You don't have to reload your tool, it just works. And you get nice, plumpy, even-sized dots. I mean, these things are amazing. So don't take my word for it, though. I have them available at the Dotting Center, and you can give them a shot. They're really, really inexpensive, and I promise you, you'll love them. Here I'm using that brilliant Lumiere paint. That halo gold is just insane. But I'm using a stylus this time. And right here I had some spacing issues. And sometimes this comes up, especially when they're, something on an arc like that. See, that just doesn't look right. So what I decided to do was make a big black dot right in the center. That gives me kind of a breaker to put in the center so that I can dot from either side. And it'll make sense when you see it. So now I can just dot from one side of the black dot all the way to the edge, and my spacing is much more correct doing it this way. Okay, so now I'm going to switch to the Teal Topaz with a larger size stylus tool and fill in the rest of those tiny dots in a circle right underneath the Lumiere paint. Now using your largest stylus tool, just place a large dot at the end of each of those points. Now we're going to add a green dot around the same size or a little bit larger on either side of that teal topaz dot. And now with the bronze applicator and a small gauge tip, just two tiny dots right on the outside edge of those green dots all the way around. Now with the black bottle, one large black dot on the outside edge of those bronze dots. Now, one thing that I found when I added resin to this coaster is the resin darkened the plastic of the coaster so much that the black dots pretty much just became invisible. So, if you are doing this project exactly as it is, I would pick a different color other than black, a lighter color, one that is going to show up, because the darkest tone is going to end up being the coaster itself, not that black paint like it is here. All right, and then after adding those brown dots, we're going to come in one more time with the bronze paint and just add two little dots just like that in between the brown. Okay, so now we're going to go back in the center. Now that the green swooshes and dots have a skin, they're a little bit more dry. We're going to add the black swooshes right in between the green and the bronze. Gosh, do you see how easy it is to apply that paint like that? It's very enjoyable, I must say. I do love these. Okay, so now for all the dots that are dry, I'm just going to add some top dots, add some little intricate bits to it. Here is that Lumiere paint on the end of a stylus, and I'm just going to draw a dot right on top of that green. It doesn't show up that much, but I think it adds a little bit of interest. Okay, so fast forward a few weeks until this is my resin day, and I'll have a video with all of this stuff, but here it is all dry, and I washed off the chalk lines, and I made a little buddy for it. I actually have a 3-piece set. These are all the colors in my living room. So I posted this video on a Saturday, and then on a Monday I pulled it down because of the whole silicone resin issue. And thank you so much for those of you who contacted me and were like, you know, that shouldn't work. Don't know if you know this, but resin doesn't stick to silicone. So thank you everyone who emailed me and messaged me. I looked into it and it shouldn't have worked. I don't know why it did, and it's 2 months later that I've been using these, and they are stuck like the dickens. I mean, it seems like it is absolutely stuck forever, but I don't know. One day these might just come unhinged and pop out, and I can deal with that with my own work, but if something happened to one of your coasters and your art, I would cry real tears. So I can't deal with that. So have you all used, what have you used for your coasters? I know a lot of you paint everything. Do you use ceramic? Do you use wood? If you've had coaster success, let us know about it in the comments below. I would love to hear what you all are using. Share links. Let's get into this. What's a good coaster, base blank coaster that we can all put art on? I want to know. All right, enough of that gloopy resin. It's time to have some fun. Time to burn those bubbles out with fire. Yeah. Now let's watch that again in slow motion. There are no bubbles anymore. It just kind of burns them out with fire. It's kind of amazing. So here they are. They're all bubble free and ready to cure. And so I set them out on my table next to a window. And yeah, now I'm going to cover them with a tote, a dust-free tote. And just to make sure that nothing lands on them, no dust or particles or anything. And I'm going to walk away for a full 24 hours before I check on them. And they should be fully cured within 72 hours. So yeah, that's it. So here we are the next day, and here it is, fully cured, and no bubbles are to be found. It's just so nice and finished and cool looking. I really, really love it. and most of the rest of this batch worked out great, with the exception of this little guy right here, learning experience. Nice. Oh yeah, that hurts. But learning experience. Well, I am so happy that you could spend the time with me and make this coaster. This was a lot of fun. And if you all liked this video, go ahead and give it a like and subscribe to my channel because I have other videos on the way. This is coming next week. Look at that magic. Wow. In the meantime, go have yourself a spirulina kombucha spritzer. It looks like pond scum, yes, but it's surprisingly refreshing. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye, guys.